let's go ahead. We'll be respectful of those of you who are punctual. So welcome to Love the Lake 2026. I will stand in front.
For me.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that Ryan can get all of the information twice. So this evening is really a lovely continuation of a legacy left by Colleen Hickney. Of course, our desserts are not quite as good as the ones she would have created for all of you, but we're doing our best, and we're really happy to keep this event series going this year. So I just wanted to first and foremost thank all of the other LCPB staff who helped to put these together. I am relatively new staff with the Basin program. I'm Alec Jackson. I'm the program lead for the education and outreach group with the Basin program. And as many of you likely know, LCPB, the Basin program, kind of coordinates and funds efforts that benefit the Lake Champlain Basin's water quality, our fisheries and wetlands, our wildlife, recreation opportunities, and cultural resources. And the Love the Lake series is a really lovely example of some of the education and outreach work that our team is able to implement, in addition to funding many partner projects and work. And Michale is a fantastic representative and example of that. So tonight we're delighted to welcome Michale Glennon from Paul Smith College and the Adirondack Water Institute. Both a distinguished scientist, researcher, and faculty member. Michale is also a pretty incredible fiber artist, and so is going to share with you one of, I think, the most wonderful blends of art and science that I've ever seen or come across, and will help us all think a little bit about how we approach science and art, and share our passions to help promote conservation and stewardship of the watershed. So welcome, Michale, for joining us. The floor is yours.
You do, and first I'm gonna share our screen for
That's right. We have
for the
That's a
recording.
beautiful photo. So you're in the middle of a lake.
That is Brendan Wilsey. I can't claim credit for that photo. That Brendan Wilsey took that one.
But you have a lake, obviously.
But yes. All right,
You're on.
folks can hear me, and welcome folks that are online. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to start with a quick survey that I always do when I talk about this project. I want to ask how many of you came out tonight to hear this talk specifically because it's about, to some degree, yarn and knitting and crochet. Is there anyone that came out for that? Besides my sarcastic husband. And if you are in that crowd, which doesn't seem to be as many this evening, but if you are in that crowd, how many of you are maybe afflicted by yarn to the same degree that I am, such that you often have a project kind of within like a 10 or 15-foot radius of yourself at all times? Is anyone in that crowd? There's always something fun. And how many of you often have a project but didn't bring one with you tonight, but wish that you did? Well, I have one right here. If anyone wants to contribute, these are community scarves that have been going around since we started this project, and I just passed them around. There's actually two in this bed. It's really a mess kind of in here, but nothing makes me happier than seeing people doing messing around with yarn while I'm talking about yarn. So there's a couple of them, but feel free to contribute to the community scarf. Knit a few rows. There's some, I think there might be a crochet one in there somewhere. Change colors, anything that you might like to do. You've been part of the community scarf. So I'm super happy to be here to talk about this project. This is To my ever, never ending delight, this is the most fun I've ever had in my career, and it's the most fun thing for me to talk about. So I'm very thankful to the Basin program to have me back to talk about it again. I want to take just a minute to mention who AWI is and Paul Smith College. If you're not familiar with us, Paul Smith is the only four-year degree granting institution within the Adirondack Park. We are in the northern part of the park. We're a small school. And we are full of students that love very outdoorsy sorts of things like natural resources are very big majors. Forestry is another big program. Culinary is also a sort of a big area of focus for us, but really outdoorsy folks. And the Adirondack Watershed Institute, for which I am the director of research, is about a 30-year program of Paul Smith College. And we really sort of operate in three different realms. We are all about protecting clean water and healthy watersheds, and we do that with applied science and research. We do that with stewardship, mostly in the form of a very big aquatic invasive species spread prevention program. And we do that with outreach and education. And so this project is very much in the vein of our outreach flavor of things, but mixed with our scientific work. So Mill and Water started in 2022 on the year that was the 50-year anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And we were sitting around talking about writing a proposal to the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership, which is the Basin program in the National Park Service, and which funds celebration of the cultural and natural and indigenous heritage in this region. And we were looking to put together a proposal, a small education proposal to do some outreach. And my colleague said, why don't we experiment with doing art? You like knit up some data or something. And I was like, what? Of course I can do that. Are you serious? Do you really want to try this? And so we put it into a small part of that small grant and received that grant from the CVNHP. And, here we are 3-4 years later, still doing this project that I never dreamed would be, people would get as excited about it as they are, but that's how it started. And so we started it in that year with an experimental small test of this idea of using fiber art essentially to tell the stories of our waterways in the region and to inspire their protection. And because it was me, I was the one that happened to be sitting there that day, it was going to be this kind of art because this is the kind that I am madly in love with and have done forever. So that was the beginning of Wool and Water, and in that year we were specifically using this idea to celebrate the legacy of the Clean Water Act. So when I describe what Wool and Water is, it is a lot of different things. It's a data art project, for lack of me knowing a better name of it. That's a collaborative data art project. It's one that we have invited people to be participants in together with us since the very beginning. Most importantly for us, it is an education and communication tool. It's collaborative. Again, anybody that wants to make a piece that becomes part of this collection is welcome to come aboard. And so it's a network of people and lots of new friends for us. It is both a traveling and a virtual exhibit. So it goes kind of anywhere in the region that I can find folks that are interested in seeing it. And it's been anywhere from bona fide real art galleries to nature centers and libraries and community centers. And it's so much fun to sort of go around and interact with folks through this exhibit. And last, I think one of my favorite things about it is that it's an opportunity for craftivism, and I'll talk about a few examples of that. So I want to take you on a little bit of a tour of some of the pieces that are in the collection of things in Wool and Water, and really what they are is all kind of fiber art creations that enable us to fulfill our mission, basically use them as education tools to talk about how we might protect clean water and healthy watersheds and the things that are impacting our watersheds. And so these are sort of some of the topics that are represented in Wool and Water, and they really range from kind of the very basics of lake science and watershed science to pieces that are kind of more indicative of the threats and the things that we focus, especially our research and long-term monitoring on at AWI. So starting with kind of some basic concepts, these are a few pieces of sort of simple, relatively straightforward watershed science. The top left one there is a representation of the bathymetry of Mirror Lake, which is the lake that the town of Village of Lake Placid is centered on. Our friends at the Osceola Freshwater Center have that beautiful bathymetric map on their website, and I rendered it in crochet with a bunch of little teeny tiny crochet circles with the darker colors representing the deeper parts of that lake. So bathymetry, if you are unfamiliar with it, is kind of the underwater analog of topography. This hat is exhibiting the phenomenon of lake stratification. I'm guessing that if you live here and you swim in our lakes in the summertime, you understand that they sort of go through this period of stratification during the summer months. They warm up and they develop these pretty highly structured kind of thermal boundaries between the epilimnion, the warmest part, the metalimnion, and then the hypolimnion. So when you're kind of like in the lake treading water, your feet are really cold, and up here you're pretty warm, and everybody's kind of used to that concept. This develops sort of from the heat of the sun in the beginning of the season. And then eventually in the fall, when we lose the sun angle and we lose that heat, those thermal sort of strata break down, and the lake undergoes a process whereby it fully mixes. And this is often referred to as turnover. So if you turn my hat over on the other side, you see that there's very little or minimal vegetation during the winter months. And then this piece, which is this one right here, is a little bit hard to explain, but people really like this piece. It's so colorful. So this is about dissolved oxygen, which is one of the things that we monitor in the lake. This is data actually from our floating platform that we affectionately refer to as Marge the Barge, that sits out in the deep hole in Upper Sanic Lake during the ice-free seasons. And so if you imagine that this is sort of, this is the representation of the bottom, right? Data right here. This is the top surface of the water, and this is depth as you increase. And this is sort of the beginning of the season when the lake has just, mixed, and it's got plenty of oxygen kind of throughout. Over the course of the summer, we develop the different strata. And what happens is that the oxygen at the bottom of the lake gets used up by biological processes and organisms over time. And what we can end up with is kind of this zone of very low oxygen. In this case, the red is, low dissolved oxygen. And for that reason, if you're a pet trout, for example, that likes to be at the bottom of the lake because you like cold water, but there's not much oxygen down there as we get later into the season, you really need this process to happen. You need the lake to mix again in the fall season to sort of redistribute the oxygen and the nutrients and all of those things. So that's, I don't know what this is, maybe a placemat or something, but it's some dissolved oxygen data from Upper Sanic Lake. Here is an issue that I'm sure folks are familiar with and have heard about. These are representations of various aspects of harmful algal blooms. So we know that these are seemingly occurring more often in our waters for a number of different reasons. They're also being reported more often because we have better sort of mechanisms of recording them. But what they are is a phenomenon whereby algae, which are a natural part of the system, certain species of algae, blue-green algae, or cyanobacteria is another name for them, have the capacity to produce cyanotoxins, which actually can be very sort of harmful to us and especially to our pets, and can threaten our drinking water and our sort of recreational capabilities. And so these are fairly concerning, and I'm sure you have seen sort of images from Lake Erie and places where they are a much sort of more profound phenomenon, but they occur here as well. And we get calls all the time about folks that are worried about harmful algal blooms. So this bag is a representation of the data on the graph there, which is the number of harmful algal blooms reported in Adirondack lakes from 2012 to 2020. In addition to my yarn problem, I have a felted bag problem. I just really worried about the bags. And so I took the data and turned it into dots instead of bar charts, and you sort of read it from top to bottom. So the top sort of row around the bag has 5, I think, in the early part of that record. And then at the very bottom, there's about 14 or 15 sort of dots representing harmful algal blooms in that bag. This one doesn't really have data, but what it does have is my attempt to represent some of the species that we find when we look at water samples from suspected HABs in the microscope downstairs in our lab. I don't have a great ability to do this, but my colleague Connor, who's really into this, can look at these and say, oh, that is Vina, or that is Gliotrichia, or one of the species that is potentially associated with cyanotoxins. And so he sends us these cool images, and I try to put them onto another bag. And then this piece right here is a representation of sort of the recipe for a HAB, I like to call it. And so what you need to have the conditions for a harmful algal bloom to form are three things. You need sunlight, you need warm, calm water, and you need nutrients. So this shawl, which is a half-pie shawl, if you're a knitting type person or a geometry type of person, this has a sun at the top. It's got 3 different rows of kind of getting warmer in color, so representing the sun, heating up the water. It's got this area right here where maybe it's still too windy and wavy for the HAB to form, and then it gets calm down here. And then I don't know if you can see from out there, but there are beads embedded in this sort of final area, which might be some sort of nutrient like phosphorus that might have come from an agricultural setting. When you get those things together, sunlight, warm, calm water, plus nutrients, then you can get profile, which are represented in my snot green colored roving at the bottom edge of this. So you can imagine, going out to an event and wearing this and the kind of conversations that you can start.
And then you have little stickies that say which geology it's representing. That's fun.
It's very fun. So as mentioned, one of the drivers of harmful algal blooms is nutrient pollution. And that can be phosphorus being sort of the one that we know the most about and causes quite a lot of issues, especially in sort of very agricultural settings, but other nutrients as well. Here's a few pieces that are also representing sort of data and information from, in this case, right from the State of the Lake report that the Basin Program puts out every couple of years.
We have a few copies.
There's copies there. This piece is called Summer Bummer, and I don't have it with me, but it's a sort of very long piece, and there's no significance to the colors in that one other than to make you think about sort of going from the sandy beach off into the deep water. But each row in that piece represents a day between Memorial Day and Labor Day, so essentially the summertime. And if you look right about the end of June, when this begins to happen, this is like 3 years of data condensed together, but this is data that you can read about in the State of the Lake report. Right about the end of June, you start to see rows within here where there are beads embedded, and that is public beaches that were closed in this record as a result of often some sort of nutrient issue, like maybe a suspected harmful bloom or levels of cyanotoxins or some other kind of nutrient issue. This one is a piece, I don't have that one with me either, but that one is a piece called Plankton. And it is based on the research of Tim Lyhook and his students at SUNY Plattsburgh, who have looked at plankton communities in Lake Champlain for a long time and found that they are shifting over time toward sort of a more dominant representation by those blue-green algae. So if you look at the colors in that piece, I just made up the shapes. I don't know, just dreamed up what these things might look like, but it shifts from kind of this multicolored greenish yarn over to the sort of dominance by the more blue cyanobacteria, blue-green algae. So that's kind of representing the community shift that has been observed in the plankton communities in Lake Champlain. And what's happening is that as it shifts more toward the blue-green algae, that is happening at the expense of sort of the abundance and diversity of some of the zooplankton species. And then this piece is right here. This is called Streamwise. It's named after the Basin Program's Streamwise program. And it is all about the importance of buffers, especially in agricultural systems. So imagine that this is a stream going through a bunch of farm fields where we might have a lot of fertilizer being used for the purpose of growing crops. And what if you come up and look at this after, maybe what this is exhibiting is that, down here where we have no stream buffer whatsoever, there's a bunch of sort of nutrients and maybe runoff and sediment getting into the stream, which is not great for the health of it. It gets thicker, and up at the top here, you have this really nice, very wide, very robust, multi-structural buffer. So that will help you to filter out those nutrients and prevent them from getting into the water. So that is a piece about streamlines. We wouldn't be AWI if we didn't talk about invasive species, and this is actually one of our biggest programs. We hire 120 boat stewards every summer who work at the boat launches all around the lakes in the Adirondack Park and do voluntary watercraft inspection and education, talking to the recreational boating public and looking at their boats and making sure that they are not transporting aquatic invasive species. These are some of the species that we work to prevent their arrival and spread in Adirondack waters. And so we don't have this one, it's not here, we really don't want it, but the other ones are in the region, and we have tumblers full of this stuff downstairs in our lab, and no one has stopped me so far from going down there and rating them and putting them onto necklaces. So here is water chestnut on a necklace, it's kind of medieval, I don't know that I'd want to wear it, but here's curly pondweed.
The water chestnuts, like that, you know. They're native.
Yeah, they are nasty. This is what the vegetative part of water chestnut looks like. These are sort of the nutlets that plant produces. But this is how big is the plant? That's these guys, because it's here in the South Bay.
This big to this big.
It's size, I mean, that's
Is it?
yeah.
I haven't seen it, but it's in the southern part of Lake Champlain.
Was it like this big?
Lauren's saying.
The rosettes
Yeah,
that
rosettes like that.
are like this,
Like
but the
this.
stems that have the rosettes can be very long.
We have an excellent video of our intern last summer trying to paddle through that down there, and this is unbelievable. I can't even move.
Yeah.
This is hydrilla. It's not a great representation of hydrilla. Hydrilla is not here. We really don't want it to get here, but it has it. I represent it on one of my noxious necklaces. As I
Now, which one's the zebra nose?
Zebra mussel is the top one in this part here, and this is Asian clam, and that's another one of those water chestnut things. Road salt is actually one of our most important pollutants in the waters in the Adirondacks. One of our programs, the Adirondack Lake Assessment Program, is a long-running water quality program for which we monitor a number of things, including 50 to 60 lakes each summer. And we have, I don't remember the proportion, but we have a number of our lakes that are exhibiting the trend that looks like that one there in Rich Lake, which is in the center of the Adirondack Park. And so this is a phenomenon of, we use the salt on our roads in the wintertime, of course, to enhance our safety, but unfortunately it gets into our waters and has a variety of different ramifications. And so this is an increasing chloride trend that is being exhibited in a number of lakes, including in Lake Champlain, especially lakes that are nearby to state roads and down slope from state roads. On the local roads, we don't use as much salt, but so this frog is wearing the data. On his back, it's a little hard to read, but he's got that data from top to bottom. He unfortunately walked away at one of our events and I never saw him again, so he's been replaced by these guys who are glued to a log. So now when he wants to take my frog, they have to take the whole log. But, you know, the idea here is to make you think about, you know, the impacts, the potential implications of salt in our waterways and salinization of our waters, especially if you're a person who maybe is on a salt limited diet, but also, you know, the implications for things like frogs and other amphibians. And then these pieces are sort of representations of several lakes that we monitor as part of the Adirondack Lake Assessment Program, and the little dots are sort of kind of indicators that we report out for those lakes each year, and one of them is sort of the salt intrusion in those lakes. So for example, this is like Colby, which gets a red dot because it's got significant salt problem.
Are they doing anything to change the salt so it doesn't have so much chlorine in it?
They are doing a tremendous amount in some communities. Lake George and Bolton Landing have done a ton of stuff, and Lake Placid especially also. And they're seeing great improvements as a result of what they've been doing.
Love it.
I don't have I don't have any pieces or data from that project, but that there's definitely are able to show that some of the improvements they've made in the village of Lake Placid have reversed their chloride trend there. So here's a couple of other pollutants, which are things that we don't really work on so much at AWI, but they're important and we think about them. One of them is microplastics. This piece is a piece that is meant to make you think about plastics. It's just it's kind of a place similar, maybe a little bit bigger than this piece. I don't know if you can read it, but it says the word plastic in sort of a retro-ish 1950s font, because that's the time that plastic production kind of went bonkers in this country and shows no sign of slowing down. And it's made from these beads that are some stupid toy that our son had when he was like 4, you know, and now they're gonna be on the planet forever. So why not use them for artistic purposes? So to the extent that there's any data in that piece, it's that the number of stitches in it is about 15,000, which is on the order of the number of microplastic particles that get released into this lake every day from the places where it is monitored, which is not very many places, but that's based on some research by Danielle Garneau and her students also at Oxford. Do we have any chemists here? Does anyone know what this is?
Well, I'm sort of guessing.
It looks like you have about 5 different parts to it, and the
So-
big black ones that are carbon.
This is a.
Oh, there you are.
It's over here. This is a long fluorinated carbon chain. This is a forever chemical. This is PFAS. Have you all heard of PFAS?
No.
Specifically, this is perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, obviously, right? So, if I had showed you the chemical formula for this, or the like stick model that you might have seen in high school chemistry, you would like roll your eyes back in your head and not remember what I was talking about 5 minutes later. But now you might remember me as that crazy woman that came here with this 6-foot long crochet model of a PFAS. And
PFAS.
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 Yes, which stands for polyfluorinated alkyl substance. It's kind of, it's a class of many chemicals that we have been using for decades in this country, and they have some very, very useful properties, but they also turn out to have some very negative properties
know what-
for human health.
All those, one's carbon, one's oxygen.
These are carbons, these are fluorine.
Fluorine.
Yeah, and then oxygen, 1 hydrogen and 1 sulfur. C7, I forget.
Where's it going?
This is one of the ones that's actually been banned, but there are lots and lots and lots of these forever chemicals, as they call them, and they have unfortunate negative implications for human health. They are associated with a number of negative human health consequences, and they persist in the environment for an incredibly long time. Very, very difficult to get rid of.
So we
So-
never,
We don't,
did we ever do something that put those in?
it is in the environment, and it comes from a number of different sources. You know, firefighting foam, it has this great sort of ability to, because one end, we're getting way further into the chemistry than I thought we would. One end of this molecule is hydrophilic and one end of this molecule is hydrophobic. So one end likes the water and one end doesn't. And when you put those together, you get a non-stick surface. So Teflon is the example that people often talk about when they talk about PFAS, because it makes these great, and you know, we use it in like Vortex jackets and treating certain kinds of fabrics, because it does have some very, very useful properties, but it also turns out to, you know, potentially be associated with cancer and endocrine disruption and a number of other things. And so you may have seen in the Olympics, there were a number of skiers that got disqualified for having used ski wax that had PFAS in it. So,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, we're getting a little
Right,
more
I could
serious now
say,
about
yeah.
regulating it, but yes, anyway, that's what this molecule is. It's a forever chemical. We don't do anything at AWI with PFAS, but when I show this to PFAS researchers, they know what it is instantly. And they're like, oh, yes, that's PFAS. Can I take a picture of that? Because I know what that is. So that is a forever chemical. This one, right here, this is a fish that is exhibiting a sort of concept called bioaccumulation. So this is a walleye. maybe you can tell it's all like large predatory fish at the top of the aquatic food chain that you might fish for in a lake like Lake Champlain. And you may be able to see that he's got sort of some things down here in his abdomen, which might be stuff like PFAS. It might be mercury. It might be PCBs, again, depending on where you are, a number of sort of chemical things, pollutants that are in our environment. And the way that he got those things is because he first ate a smaller fish that also had consumed those things. And the smaller fish got them from eating an even smaller fish or, maybe plant matter. And so what happens is that we have these things sort of in the environment and they sort of move up the food chain and become highly, highly concentrated, which is why we have things like fish consumption advisories. So fish is a great food source, but then you have to think about, the risk of consuming things like mercury, for example. So there is your bioaccumulation.
Just a down, so right.
Another one that kids would maybe. And then last, climate change. Climate is something that I think about a lot, especially as a person that I love the winter very, very much. And so we have had some, this winter may be an exception, but we've had some kind of depressing winters of late. And for that reason, I have made several pieces that have to do with changes, especially to winter, but also to our summer environment. So on the far left is a dress that's called Greta. It is named for, I'm sure, the Greta that you all know. And I actually made that piece back in 2019, before this project even started. I made that piece because it was a time that Australia was on fire and all these animals were, it was just a really depressing time. And Greta Thunberg was in the process of sending across the Atlantic and, sustainable craft to come to climate meetings in New York. And I wanted to make a piece with climate data in it. I wanted it to be something I could wear to climate marches. So I made it in the dress format. I wore it to climate marches. I was too hot. That was the whole point. So it is a record of global temperature anomalies beginning in 1880. And so each of the colors is a representation of how far above or below we are from what are called long-term climate normals. So sort of like what we know as the normal climate, although that keeps shifting as time goes on. But I probably don't have to tell you that sort of the older data is at the top. And as you get to the bottom, the very, very red part is where we are now. It's another representation of the hockey stick diagram data that you may have seen of the warming stripes data. So that is the dress called Greta. This piece right here is one that is easy to interpret. This is the ice record on Lake Champlain. So this is called the Champlain ice scarf. This is also data that are in the State of Lake report. Each row in this is a year beginning in 1816, and the lighter colored rows are years when the lake froze all the way, and the darker colored rows are years when it didn't freeze all the way.
And that's what, 100 years old?
It starts in, I think that record starts in 1816, so a little bit longer than that, yeah. And this, a binary data set like this, where it's just, did it freeze or not? It's really easy to sort of see the pattern in that one. And lots of people have made different interpretations of this particular scarf. I don't remember what year I made this one, but whatever year it was, I froze like it. And then this piece right here is also about sort of the effect of warming winter temperatures. This is called Ice Fishing Blues. It's a representation of winters beginning in 1899, I think. Sometimes I forget the years, but each hole in this scarf is a winter since that time, or it's a hole in ice if you look at the world the way an ice fisherman does. And the ones with blue around the edges are years where the mean temperature was 25 degrees or higher, which is the temperature at which we often have to cancel ice fishing derbies and competitions because the ice isn't safe enough. And then last, this one is a summer phenomenon. This piece is called Trying to Reason with Hurricane Season. If you know where that title comes from, then you're a fellow Jimmy Buffett fan like I. These are all little hexagons that have kind of a swirly pattern. I don't know if you can see that, but they are in that pattern because what this is representing is tropical cyclone data. So this comes from a data set called the $1 Billion Storms database. You can look up this information and find sort of storms of all kinds all across the nation that have caused $1 billion worth of damage or cost that much to sort of for us to recover from. So that is for each of the blue ones as a year when we had a storm in the tropical cyclone category that impacted the Northeast climate region that we're in. That record begins in 1980, so it's not as long as some of the other records, but I think there are 14 or 15 of the blue hexagons that represent how many times that has happened in our climate region. So there's some other data on the back there. So the blue is a $1 billion storm year and the green is even that. So I want to transition away from all of this doom and gloom because it's too depressing and talk about some other aspects of this project that are much more fun and that I've been trying to focus on more recently to create pieces that tell the good, happy stories as well. This is a great example. This sweater was entirely just for fun. This is my friend Dan Spada, who is a retired wetland biologist and who in his retirement has taken up wild ice skating and has become sort of a proselytizer for this, how much he loves to go wild ice skating, especially here on your lake. And he keeps meticulous records of all those skating trips, and he gave me some of his spreadsheets. And so I made a sweater of skating trips taken by Dan Spada on Lake Champlain for I forget what years, but this is kind of a cable pattern that I took away half of the cable on, and it kind of pops out at you and maybe makes you think about what it looks like to skate on black ice. Anyways, it puts out these really like disturbing to me videos of skating on ice that just looks so scary. But anyway, that's the Spada skating sweater. And then this one is a piece that I created back when we had that original grant from CVNHP, really to sort of tell what can happen when we do actually do the things that we know can improve water quality. And so this is not from our region, as you can tell right away if you start reading what it is. It's about the Cuyahoga River. I made this piece, one, because it's iconic. I think most people, if they haven't seen the photo, you at least have read about how the Cuyahoga River caught on fire multiple times, actually. And it's kind of an icon of whenever you sort of read about the Clean Water Act, it's often a discussion point. I also made it because when I was growing up, my grandparents lived in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. So we went there often. And this piece is really meant to sort of tell the environmental history of the Cuyahoga River. So the bottom is kind of like a river shape, getting bluer, maybe getting healthier, going through sort of its environmental history from formed by the glaciers tens of thousands of years ago through the time when it became essentially kind of a toxic waste dump. But what happened as a result of that is that those fires, and one of them in particular, kind of galvanized all sorts of environmental action, including the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, amendments to which became the Clean Water Act. And ultimately, my favorite part of this is when the river otter returns to downtown Cuyahoga Falls after being gone for more than 100 years. So not from our region, but kind of an iconic clean water story. And when I show this piece, people say, oh, that reminds me of the bobcat and salmon coming back to the bobcat. So I think there's analogs of this kind of story in other places as well. And I want to just talk at the end here about sort of the ways in which we have involved other people in this project in so many fun ways. One of them is just as participants who have contributed to the exhibit itself. A lot of what I've showed you is pieces that I have made. The ones I made are the ones that I know the best and tend to have the best photos of because they're in my possession. But lots and lots of people, I think more than 40 at this point, have made contributions to this collection of items. And all of these tell a story, more temperature information, some invasive species information. There are several on this page that tell the story of birds, specifically because we had a grant in 1 year from Northern New York Audubon to sort of elevate the profile of birds, and especially birds that had connections to aquatic environments. So just to say that lots of people have taken time out of their own lives to create part of this exhibit as well. We have also involved students in lots of different ways, and I love the phrase pre-K to gray, because that's really this project. We have sort of worked from the tiniest kids who were in a homeschool group at Lake Placid Public Library, some of whom I think were even younger than kindergarten age, and taught them about lake transparency. We taught the whole third grade at Petrova Elementary in Saranac Lake about acid rain recovery using needle felting. Not a single one of them stabbed anyone else. They just learned about how lakes had changed, and they learned how to do fine motor skills at the same time. We have been invited every year for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to the Wild Center's Adirondack Youth Climate Summit, which I would argue is an absolutely world-class event. And we have been invited to do workshops each year there around some aspect of this kind of project. Here we are in Montpelier doing a workshop for folks and messing with some data from flooding in Montpelier and teaching folks how to sort of represent data artistically in that workshop. We've also involved community members in terms of contributing data to the project. This was a little bit of a spin-off from Mullen Water, but I got an arts fellowship from what's called the New York State Rural and Traditional Arts Fellowship. This is New York State Council on the Arts money that's re-granted through Wyoming County in New York. And this is a fellowship that's dedicated to celebrating rural places, which I have lived in all of my life. I grew up in Lake Placid. I now live in Raybrook, a few miles down the road. And it's dedicated to celebrating traditional arts, which likewise I have practiced forever. So I was super excited about this. And what I did with this project was to kind of do a celebration of community values. I just asked people in a 1-question survey, tell me what you love about the Saranac chain. So this is, if you know the region, this is upper, middle, and lower Saranac, Lake Flower, Osita, and Kawasa. It's kind of the chain that goes right through downtown Saranac Lake, and you know, people recreate on these lakes all the time. They're very much at the heart of the community. I asked them to tell me what they loved the most. And I took the top 6 of the things that they told me they loved the most about the Saranac chain, and I made 100 little canoes that I then felted. And then we took them out in the chain and we took photos. So as a result of this, we have a bunch of fun photos of these, and also the canoes themselves. And so this day was data plus fiber art plus swimming, which for me is
And where did all those little boats go?
Where did they go? They're now, I have them now, but they're it's like kind of another spin-off aspect of this project, but that I thought we can still play with and take photos of them.
I think that's great. That's great.
We have done a number of make-alongs, knitters and crocheters, and other fiber folks who love to do make-alongs and make the same thing all at the same time. We just love to do that. So a couple of winters ago, my colleague Leah got deployed to Antarctica to do some work, limnological scientific work in the dry valleys at McMurdo. And while she was in Antarctica for a couple of months, we just asked folks, hey, do you want to make an Antarctic scarf with us? Just knit or crochet every single day, whether it's colder where you are or where Leah is in Antarctica. And she was there during their summer, and so we actually beat Antarctica a number of times. So it's some folks that made Antarctic scarves. 2 winters ago, we did this blanket collaborative that we called it. Again, we just asked people, you know, every day for a couple of months, make a square that's for a month and knit a row. Light color if it snowed that day, and a darker color if it didn't. And so I have this giant blanket of people's snow data. Again, this was just for fun, but
So you put all those pieces together.
we put them all together, and it's a big giant heavy blanket.
That's
Snow record. And then this one was just this past summer, and this was tremendously fun. This was a collaboration between us at Pulsness and Third Act upstate New York. I don't know if anyone knows who Third Act is. This is Bill McKibben's climate activism group for old folks. I don't actually they'll let you in at any age, it doesn't matter, but in theory, it's the philosophy of this group is that folks who are maybe 60 or older, oftentimes are retired or maybe semi-retired, they have time on their hands. They might have super good skills. They might be like accountants or lawyers or have some really valuable skills, and you can't stop them from voting. So that's Bill McKibben's philosophy of this is a group that should do climate activism. And so I love the idea of this group and I met them at an event last winter. I said, could we collaborate? Because I imagine that there's gotta be some overlap in the Venn diagram of like older folks that are climate activists and like the fiber art. Like I just figured there had to be an overlap there. And there absolutely was. And so we developed a collaboration around Sunday, which was this past September 20th, which was a day of certainly national, but even global action around celebrating clean energy and especially solar energy and sort of how far that has come. So of course, the summer we said, make us a representation of the sun, however you would like to do that. Knit it, crochet it, quilt it, whatever. We ended up with people in 7 different states and 2 different countries and 2 cajillion cities that we then put together in this big tapestry, which we took to the Capitol in Albany on that day. It's not very photogenic at the Egg in Albany, but we had since taken it to the Wild Center and other places. We even, to get them down to Albany, we did this ridiculous relay, starting with a canoe right on campus in Paul Smith's. We had the sons in that basket with me paddling. We then handed them off to a bunch of little kids, then to a person on an e-bike, then to an electric vehicle, which drove them down to Albany, making a few stops along the way, and then totally sort of electric vehicle type kind of brigade to take the sons down to Sunday. So that was a really, really fun experience from this past summer. And I wanted to share this with you because this is the kind of feedback that we have gotten for this project, but for other aspects of this project as well. And this means probably even more to me than the art does is when people write us and say, you know, thank you, this made me feel like I was a part of the conversation. They were super excited to participate and they felt like they got a chance to play a role in it. And that kind of feedback is tremendously valuable to me. So I'll end with just telling you a couple of new things that we're doing right now. Both of them funded by the Lake Champlain Basin Program. I can never express the amount of gratitude I have for the Basin Program, who have been our greatest supporters of all of this. Right now, we have a small education grant to teach a course on communicating science through the arts, not just fiber art, but sort of any kind of art. So there are 12 students. We capped it at 12 because we wanted them to be able to meet at our building, and that's how many we can fit in our conference room. But they are kind of over the course of the semester, we have taken kind of a deep dive on 5 or 6 watershed science topics like nutrient pollution, aquatic invasive species, road salt issues, aquatic organism passage. And then in addition to that, we are bringing in artists who either join us virtually or in person. This is Lake and Sunsoon from Talking Wings and Talking Rivers. I don't know if you've maybe come across their work. They joined us a few weeks ago. This is a woman who makes amazing art. She goes up to the Arctic and looks at permafrost that is melting away and creates some amazing both paintings and sound art from recording the sounds of that. This is Annie Haney, who is actually from Minneapolis, but now in Brooklyn, who makes art out of, among other things, road salt that she actually has swept off of the road and combined with paints and made really cool stuff. Just beautiful stuff out of it. And in every case, they've come, you know, either in person or virtually and joined us, not just to sort of present their art, but then also kind of lead students through some sort of interactive activity. Here they are trying to drop road salt onto a piece of paper in the recommended spacing, which turns out to be hard to do. And over the course of the semester, they are all creating their own artistic project that sort of combines some sort of science issue that we've learned about in the class in whatever way they would like to express it. And then at the end of the semester, we'll have sort of a little event and present that. So that is my class that's happening right now. And then the last one is a book. We're going to do a book about this project. We have a large education grant to produce what we are calling kind of a user's guide that's going to use Wool and Water as a little bit of a case study on, again, the idea of how you would communicate science in this way or with other artistic forms. So again, we will sort of deep dive on some key watershed science issues and sort of describe what those are. We'll pair those with examples from this project or others that, you know, how might you represent this artistically? What if you want to make your own half shawl? How would you I'm doing it? I will write down the pattern. And then as well as that, we're gonna put in there sort of lesson plans for educators. We get asked all the time, like, can you come and do a workshop? Can you provide some of your workshop materials so that I can teach this in my class as well? So that is a new project that has sort of just started, and we're working now with trying to identify a graphic designer within that project.
That's great.
So, just to end with a few notes about sort of where we started and where we are now. I'm again continually amazed by what kind of terrific response we've gotten to this project, and starting from that one grant, we're now, several years down the road and have done, more than 120 events, to the point that I can't really fit them all in my timeline anymore, but without using really small font. But it's just been amazingly well received. And if you were to graph the number of talks that I give about some sort of scientific issue before and after Will and Water, it's increased by 130% since before and after the project started. And I've been a practicing wildlife ecologist in the Adirondacks for 2 decades. But it's this project that people always want to hear about, which is fine with me. I will talk about the project anytime. We did a tiny bit of social science with a grant a few years ago, asking folks a whole bunch of questions about sort of what is the value of this in terms of sort of environmental education, and just some snapshots from that. Lots of people tell us that it is sort of a combination of science and art together. That's what makes them come and take a look at the exhibit. And I'm particularly encouraged by the fact that they tell me that not only did it help them understand some aspect of watershed science better, but 2/3 or more, 3/4 or more, tell me that it has inspired them to take action to protect water quality, which is the whole reason that we started this in the first place. As much fun as it is, that is actually the reason. And so, again, I'm tremendously thankful for the opportunity to do this. And had I known that I just needed to knit my data, I would have done that years and years ago. So if you haven't heard enough about that from me babbling about it to you for an hour, there's lots of other resources. You can take a look at the website. You can use my knitted QR code. You can just go to this website. There's cards around that have the QR code on it as well. You can take a tour of the virtual exhibit. You can watch the TED Talk of all things.
You do the TED Talk.
I did a TED Talk about the project. Very
Good,
fun.
so we want to see it.
This is just sort of like what it looks like if you go into the virtual gallery. You can, again, in each of these, you can sort of click on the image, learn about what each of the pieces are, learn about what what the issue is that they are telling. If it's a data set, what was the data set? Who was the maker? How did it get created? And then if it's a piece that I created, that means it's also on Ravelry. So if you're that level of yarn nerd, you can also learn about sort of what pattern was it, what needles did I use, and what yarn did I use. And there's also other things on the website that are about kind of how might you get involved. You can link to an ideas folder. You can link to a button that sends me an email and says that I want to participate. There's all kinds of ways to get involved in this project. So I will just end by saying I'm very appreciative that you come out to hear about it. I hope that you'll consider taking part in the project. And I bet that if you don't do fiber art yourself, I bet if you're not a knitter and crocheter, I bet that you know someone who is. And we'd love to have all of you involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Michale, and we do have some time for questions. I will also encourage you all to feel free to get up and help yourself more snacks, because we don't need to take those home. So please go ahead and do that, and we can open it up for questions. But also feel free to take off, that's fine too.
Feel free to come up and
We can turn the lights on a little bit more, I can do them, but
I like that.
it's nice to see the stuff.
So that's you underwater,
that's me. Just being silly.
or is it a bathroom?
That is me, just being totally silly, but yes.
Oh, that's great. But you need the fish. You need the fish up there spitting this out.
That was a few years ago before I
Or
was
something.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like through your process of making things, do you think about the intersection between like water and wool and like the physical intersection of them, like kind of wet felting and stuff like that?
I do, and I think I said I have a felt disorder, like I love to felt things, like, and I don't know how to do needle felting very well, but I love to knit something and then felt it. This one is a newer one that I just made that's about the suburbia.
No, they're good, they're really good.
I love to do that, and I actually have had the opportunity, crazily enough, to speak to more than one fashion class, which I never in a million years, if you had told me I, as a wildlife ecologist, would be lecturing for a fashion design class, but that happened to me twice now, once at the University of Rochester and once at Kent State.
You should come to Mecca.
And I talked to them as part of, we had sort of a whole lecture about, this, you know, the science sort of communication part of this, but also the sustainability aspect of it and like that, how it related to fast fashion and how wool is a sustainable material. So yes, I can talk about fiber for anytime, yeah.
I would say to suggest that when you do your book, that you include little videos of the various ways you've made some of these things, or how you start and go through it.
Yeah,
And
that's a good idea.
you've already got those little boats. I mean, but I think that would be a good, and you can put a QR code in your book that will then go to your video.
It's a good idea.
I don't know whether you've already done that, but it just,
I have a few videos of making, but that is a good idea.
I'm just saying, yeah, you just need little 15 seconds of those videos. You don't need the huge ones. I don't know whether you can get them to play on your page or not. Or do we just have to do the QR code and then play over
In the
here?
printed book, it would be a QR code, but certainly, the book will be digitally available to them.
And then you can have
Links
these,
to the-
yeah. Oh, it'd be unbelievably good.
I'm just curious how your fiber artwork in this project in particular has, if it has at all, sort of shaped your actual scientific work, the research, your approach to that, it's informed that anyway.
That's a good question. I would say this project has primarily, made me learn a ton about the work that my colleagues do, because I am the sort of terrestrial, I'm the most terrestrial of the people on our staff. And everyone else knows a whole bunch more about the water science than I do, but this project, because it forces me to learn those issues well enough that I could represent them in this way, it's done that a lot for me. I do think about it now, if I'm working on a project, that relates to my own work, I immediately go to how would I tell about it in this project. I don't know so much in the study design phase, but definitely thinking about communicating the results of it. Yeah.
Do you have any big projects that you're working on now, like relate to research?
I don't at the moment. I'm kind of in between things. I always have about 75 projects going at the same time, but right now they're mostly just mindless things. This one is the most recent one that I made, and it's about sort of, I've read a bunch of papers recently about the subnivean, because I'm a mad lover of small mammals, just have been forever. And the subnivean environment, which is technically like the layer that forms between the ground and the snow cover, the snowpack, and all these wonderful, interesting things happen there, maintains about a 32-degree temperature all winter. When we have a good snowpack, amazing environment, like plants that can still be under there and these little critters that can live in there and store their food and all of that. But as we lose kind of the North American snowpack, as it decreases, then that is something that is, you know, potentially under threat in some places. And I've been walking around all winter looking at these little holes in the snow and like wanting to, you know, and experimenting myself with camera trapping and like trying to take a picture of.
Good for you.
So, I love those critters. So, that one is one that I made really recently, but now I need to think about what the next one is gonna be.
It'll come to you. I was gonna say that maybe you do one for the basin study, because over here, we cleaned up the river so that this is the salmon is finally able. And I think, was it 250 years? The salmon has been locked up. and that they can now go and spawn because of all the cleanup you guys have done.
I was thinking about aquatic organism passage because we don't have any pieces that really represent that.
But I was just thinking, because you did that,
Yeah,
you're doing these time things that maybe,
Yeah.
and you said you got something, it's now floating around, it wasn't, right? And you did a scarf on it.
which one? I don't know which topic you're talking about.
You talked about something that is now returned, but was a
Oh,
hundred
that
years.
was in the Cuyahoga piece, it was about river otter. But yes, here in the book had return of the salmon, and there's lots.
But
of-
I'm just saying, I think that could be something that you make,
I do have.
or the basin study offshoot.
Yeah. I do have a bazillion ideas, so which one I can actually make happen. It takes a while to figure out.
Maybe we'll buy the yarn for you.
And writing a book is no small. Go ahead.
I was just, I'm guessing you use all like, what material do you use? You use all wool, and is there like a special source sitting there? Do you?
I don't have a special source, and I try to use wool or at least natural materials as much as I possibly can, but I do recognize that I wouldn't want that to be a barrier for anybody, so certainly we have acrylic and other stuff represented in this project too, and every once in a while, there's just something. I don't have a picture of it, I don't think, there's some instances in which like some really crazy weird novelty yarn, like you just, it works so well that you feel like, okay, I gotta have this petroleum product mixed in here, but I do try to use natural materials, and I have talked to a number of folks about trying to tell the story of the fiber in the region as well as just the science. And I have a picture in my head of some piece. I've been trying to get bits of fiber from local producers whenever I find them, and eventually one day I'm making a piece that sort of has the lake and then has, you know, little bits of whatever from different farms. I would love to do that. I haven't done it yet, but it's one of the ideas that I think would be really interesting, and often we'll have fiber folks come and hear this, and I just, it's like, we need to think about that project someday too, but I think that would make a really good story.
You know, there's just a couple of pretty cool fibers here.
Yeah.
Like that on the island that,
Yeah.
you know, either do design of their own stuff or use the natural, not. Yeah, like fits.
Yeah, it would be, I think that would be a really cool
Yeah.
story to tell.
Use locally sourced materials to tell a local data story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talk about those producers and.
I have a quick question, just, you know, thinking about artists and their practice and, you know, get tired of knitting. No. Question. I guess, how do you sustain sort of your energy for, creation and using the wool and?
I never get tired of knitting, I do sometimes feel like. Every once in a while, I need to take a break from trying to represent some sort of data or science and just make something that's like. So that's why I always have like 85 projects going that are like just mindless, you know, I need to pay attention. But I never get tired of like the process of it. But that's part of the reason why I don't have anything complicated going on right now, just because work itself, my real work, like science, has been really, really busy lately, and like to do this well. I really like dive into a topic at least sometime, so every once in a while I'll look for money to like do an artist residency somewhere where you actually could, now I understand so much better how important that is to like get away and like just think about that instead of, it's really hard to do. But that's why the project is collaborative. It's a million, since even if I stop for a year, there's enough stuff that, plenty of stories to tell.
Any last questions or thoughts?
Yeah.
Please.
If, so it's like, how would someone submit something or ask to be part of this? Is it through?
You can email me, my card is right here, and on the website, there's a button on there somewhere that will like send me an email, or it will send you like, I don't know, it's like a little survey, which I put up there years ago that would ask folks like, is there a particular issue you're interested in, or water body or whatever, but basically like anybody who wants to participate is absolutely welcome to. My challenge usually is that I can't stand to like stifle anyone's creativity and I just want that, you know, so I will say, like, if you want me to help you, is there an issue you're interested in? Is there a water body here? Can I help you find data? I have a much harder time when somebody says, I'm just telling you what to make, because I'm like, I can't tell you what to do. So that's harder for me, but absolutely anybody who wants to is welcome. Send a piece, and even if you don't wanna have it be a part of the traveling exhibit, but you want it to be in the virtual exhibit, we've had people that have done that. You keep the piece, but send photos of it, and then it can be in the online presentation too. Or they sometimes lend me things and then take them back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.